Well, welcome back. It's time for Motivational Monday. And since September is Suicide Awareness Month, we want to take some time to acknowledge the 5 myths that many people believe about suicide and talk about how we can help with our loved ones who may be going through a really hard time in contemplating suicide. Anna Farris with True North Counseling Center joins us over video chat to help us navigate through these difficult times. Now, Anna, we're talking about some different myths here that some people might be discussing. The first one here that we wanted to mention is that suicide only affects individuals with mental health conditions. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so many individuals with mental health conditions are not affected by suicidal thoughts at all. And on the other end, not all people who attempt suicide or die by suicide have mental illness. Some other reasons that a person may choose to attempt suicide are relationship problems, criminal or legal matters, persecution, eviction or loss of a home, a devastating or debilitating illness, trauma, rejection, and recent or impending crises.
And that second myth there as well is that people who die by suicide are selfish and take the easy way out. I know that's something that I hear sometimes when people have contemplated suicide. It's like, well, I don't necessarily feel sorry for that person. Can you tell us why people shouldn't be saying that?
Yeah, so many people who choose to attempt suicide don't make the decision because they don't wish to live. Instead, they've been suffering so deeply and they feel so helpless and hopeless that they're looking for a way to end their suffering. So instead of it being the easy way out and a really easy decision, it's often a really hard choice. And for lack of a better term, feels kind of like a last ditch effort when all other forms of symptom management and coping that they've tried have failed for them.
And that third myth there as well is that once a person is suicidal, they will always be suicidal. Can you explain why that necessarily isn't the case?
Yeah, so the problem with a lot of these myths is that they really take an all or nothing approach. And for most people or all people, there's nothing that's true all of the time. And the same is true with suicidal thoughts. So many times, active suicidal thoughts are short term and situation specific. And once the situation is resolved or the deep, painful emotions and the thoughts dissipate, so does the suicidal ideation. And they can come and go over time, but individuals with suicidal thoughts and even individuals with past suicide attempts can live a long, successful life.
And asking someone whether or not they're suicidal could actually put ideas into their head and then lead them to a suicide attempt. Can you explain why that myth isn't necessarily true?
Yeah, the truth is for this one that talking about suicide provides an opportunity for communication. For people who may feel suicidal, they often feel alone or they feel that like their struggles aren't important enough for other people to care about. So why talk about it? And so asking a person whether or not they have or are contemplating suicide can really give that person hope and help them realize that somebody does care about them enough to listen to their struggles. And it creates this type of support network that can be a huge protective factor for someone who's felt alone and helpless in the past.
And that fifth myth that we wanted to discuss here as well is that most suicide attempts happen without warning.
Yeah, so the truth is that there are many warning signs that we can look for when an individual may be contemplating or planning a suicide attempt. So some of these are the recent death of a friend or a relative, whether it was by suicide or by another means, previous suicide attempts, preoccupation with themes of death, or expressing suicidal thoughts, giving away prized possessions, making a will, making final arrangements, withdrawal from friends and family, dropping out of group activities, major personality changes, lack of interest in the future, and then a sudden lifting of spirits. So when there have been a lot of these other indicators in the past, this sudden lifting of spirits can really point to the decision that this person may be trying to end the pain of life, and they've made that decision and they're at peace with that.
I know that we haven't talked about this whatsoever, but I'm assuming that this is a myth as well. It's just that people who are contemplating suicide typically have a certain type of persona, or it's a certain type of person as well. I recently read something where it talked about a lot of farmers, people who live in those rural communities, and they have a lot of pressure from families as well, where they are undergoing and an amazing amount of stress, and sometimes they reach that as well. Can you explain what people in those sort of circumstances should be doing to reach out and ask for help? What are some of the just easy ways to reach out and ask for help?
Yep. So some of the protective factors that against suicide are a strong family support, a strong community support. So just the number one thing that we can do is be supportive. Don't be afraid to talk about it. Like we learned in that myth, talking about it opens that door for communication, and let our friends and family know that we're here to talk. We're here because we care about them. We're here for whatever they may need. And then just encourage your loved ones if you feel like they are experiencing a really hard time or contemplating suicide. Encourage them to get help, whether that's meeting with a professional therapist, engaging in a substance abuse program, checking into an inpatient facility if they're not able to verbalize that they are confident that they can keep themselves safe, or even calling a local or national suicide hotline.
All right, Sienna, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you this Labor Day Monday.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Well, Jack has your forecast.